Copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news, reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit educational or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good evening and welcome to Woman. Why do people take drugs? Why, more importantly, do middle-class women with most of the advantages of our affluent society take drugs? My guest, Barbara Kerr, has some insights into these questions. In her book, Strong at the Broken Places, are 6 highly individual, candid, and revealing stories of women who tell what it's like to face the good and bad sides of American society, eventually coming to grips with their own pains and addictions. Barbara is a journalist from Chicago. Barbara, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sandy.
Can you tell me how you came to write this book?
Well, it's not a terribly exciting story. I felt, as I think so many women do today, a certain debt to the feminist movement, to the women who've done so much to make life easier for the particular kind of woman that I happen to be and that I assume you are by virtue of your profession. But in my years of professionalism in Chicago and Los Angeles, in the Midwest, I could not help but notice that immense numbers of middle-class women were taking drugs. And they were
Shalom, beloved brothers and sisters, Jews and Gentiles alike. Welcome. This is your humble servant, Big Levi, and today is Shabbatai, December the 2nd, 2023, and it's currently 1:07 p.m. Eastern Time, pre-recorded. Now, beloved, this is a show called Women. Some of you may remember this. It was aired in 1974. August 14, 1974. Okay, so let's see how long this episode calculator. See how long this episode was. 1974 to 2023. We can say 2024, but 2023 since we're already in December, and let's say 2023. 2024, 50 years. 1974 to 2024. Okay, 50 years ago. Now, 50 years ago, this episode aired. All right, let's go. When was the feminist movement began? Ah, boy, 1848. No. In the 1960s, let's see. 1963. 1963. When did the feminist movement begin in the 60s? 1966? The hell? What's going on here? I say 1963 here. Say 1966. We say 1963. All right, 1963. Let's go back to Google. Pull out the calculator. 1963. Oops. This thing, the numlock does. Oh, here we go. 1963. Okay, with 2023. 60 years ago. All right, that's when the feminist movement truly take place in 1963. Now, in 1963 and 1974, this woman, she realized this even before the 74. He realized this in the 60s, but let's give it the benefit of the doubt. Would say in 1964. So 11 years later, okay, all right, Barbara Kerr, I believe, is that what that is? They should put the name of the guest here. Okay, yes, Barbara Kerr, okay, which if we do a little search, there's not that much on her. Okay. Barbara Kerr. What is that? Barbara Kerr. Writer. Oops. Writer. Strong. The book is called Strong and Broken Places, I believe. Is that what the Strong at the Broken? The book is Strong at the Broken Places. Make sure you get that, at the Broken Places. Yes. And the book costs about $8. I haven't read it. I have not read the book, but it costs $8. Strong at the Broken Places, women who have survived drugs. Okay, it costs $8. If some of you women can read it, or some of you men can read it, and you will enlighten us on this book by Barbara Kerr. But she will say a few stuff about this. All right, now we established that 11 years later, this woman starts seeing there's a problem with the so-called feminist movement. Remember, the show called Women. And it was 83 that gives those women medias, outlets to do this type of things. And she went out there and started talking about middle-aged women. Literally, she said white women. That was in 1974, 50 years ago. The problem was so bad. Okay, you will hear it from her. And then we will compare 1974, when this thing was ravaging those people, to now. What did they do? How did they treat this? Are those people under the are those folks under the blessing, or are they in the curses? This is truly a back in time look. Back then, we'll call this Back Then, part 1. Let us watch. All right, we established 2 things now.
Taking them
and let's just apologize because that's the audio, beloved. There's nothing I can do about it. This is the audio. That's how it is. It's only playing one ear, and that was recorded in 1974, like 49 years ago. So you will not hear this properly, okay?
Day. And I wanted to find out what particular kind of woman that I happen to be, and that I assume you are.
Okay.
From Chicago. Barbara, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sam.
Can you tell me how you came to write this book?
Well, it's not a terribly exciting story.
Okay, watch her hands, watch her eyes. Okay, something is going on with her. Okay, all right, watch her hands. Anytime you're talking to anyone, and especially a woman, and she doing this with her hair and her eyes is all dilated, and then her mouth, and she's looking around and breathing, and something is going on here. But anyway,
I felt, as I think so many women do today, a certain debt to the feminist movement, to the women who've done so much to make life easier for the particular kind of woman that I happen to be, and that I
okay, a particular kind of woman that I happen to be,
assume you are,
and I assume you are.
Thank you.
A white woman, okay, part of this thing, 83. Okay, that's the signal. Because remember, in the 70s, well, back then, those people, they had their own code word, and women, especially our women, will watch this. They think they are talking about them too, because they have some kind of job, like they have what they call this again. They are journalists too, just like her. And they say, okay, well, yeah, we're women finally liberated from the atrocity of men. Okay, now this woman is telling you exactly what was going on back then.
But in my years of professionalism in Chicago and Los Angeles, in the Midwest, I could not help but notice that immense numbers of middle-class women were taking drugs.
Immense number, immense. Let's define this word so that people can know exactly what she's talking about here. Define the word immense. Well, just great. There we go. Google. There we go. I should have said define immense. There you go. Immense means very great in size, amount, or degree. It can also mean supremely good. For example, you might describe the ocean as immense or your homework load.
Immense.
Immense, extremely large or great, especially in scale of degree. A massive amount of white women were doing drugs, taking drugs at work and in her professional life, at home, wherever they were junkies. Okay, again, back in the 70s, they called this addicts. All right, women, unlikely addicts, middle class women. They were, well, right now they say there's no middle class, but that's what that was. Super rich white women with good jobs, great jobs. Okay, back in the 70s, a journalist like her, she was banking. Okay, they were junkies, and she noticed this. She's like, I could not help notice this. Okay, but what caused that? All right, what caused this?
You're taking them habitually, day to day, and I wanted to find out, in part, why they turned to drugs, but even more importantly, how they resolved the problems that led them into drug use in the first place. And so that's what the book is really about. It's about middle-class women and their psychological problems, their desperate solutions, among which we find drugs, and their resolution.
Tell me a little bit about how you gathered the material for the book.
So again, they ask her, what make you write this book? What make you write it? She said, well, because of the feminist movement. She made it clear. She didn't say because of things. She said because of the feminist movement 11 years ago. All right, and let's assume she's been working before that, before 11 years ago. She's been working in the 60s, and she see what the feminist movement was doing to women that look like her. She was seeing what the program was doing. That's what, when they even began to pushing this stuff onto us, because they made this stuff to push on us, to separate us from our women, separate our women from us, take their children, destroy their family, and it was already causing a lot of trouble in the midst of them than our people. Now they ask, okay, well, how did you word this book? What make you, what pushed you? What was your inspiration? Well, she literally tell you, well, because of the feminist movement that make me the type of women that I am till today. I'm assuming you are the same thing, which she is. You know, we're both white women and we both do drugs. That's what that is. So, and she said, well, the reason why is because I could not help notice. Okay, because it was all up in her face. When I was working in Chicago, LA, Midwest, very rich, affluent women, they got good jobs, their husband got good jobs, but they were strung out junkies. That's a polite way of saying, say they were doing drugs, but they were strung out junkies. And then now, beloved, again, she herself is an addict. In 1974, if it was a black woman or a black man or anybody of our category would have sit there on TV and said, I had an addiction, or I have an addiction, I had it, I still have it, and my husband or plenty other women that I know do drugs, the police would have just break into the studio and arrested her. Well, she's breaking the law. Oh, yo, man, that's an interview we're just doing. They would all just break it. Well, she said, she just admitted on camera that she do things. That would be a different story here. Okay? She admitted, she said, those women were doing a hell of a lot of drugs. And I was too. And the reason why they were doing it is the psychological trauma, the stuff they were suffering back then. Okay? That made them do a lot of heavy drugs. And back then they were calling them medicine cabinet. All right, they didn't call them heroin or you know, Xanax and stuff, which back then, well, they call it barbiturates and stuff like that. Okay, well, it's medicine cabinet. They were junkies.
Haphazardly. I sent word out to friends.
There we go.
And so that's what the book is really about. It's about middle-class women and their psychological problems, their desperate solutions, among which we find drugs.
Okay, it's about white women and their psychological issue and the desperate measure to find a solution to this thing.
And their resolution.
Tell me a little bit about how you gathered the material for the book.
Haphazardly. I sent word out through friends in drug programs and Alcoholics Anonymous groups. I contacted psychologists and psychiatrists who gave me names of patients, acquaintances. But I found that after the first month, it was not a question of my seeking out women. Women started coming to me.
Okay. So they say, well, how did you get the contact? Say, well, I went to those alcohol AA and group where I know people do drugs. I talked to the managers in there, the people that was in charge, and I tell them I'm running something. Are there any women that are abusing drugs out there? And then some of them start getting some, but at one point it becomes so bad that they start seeking her. They start going after her. They start coming onto her. And that's when she noticed, wait a minute, I'm not alone in this thing, and there's a problem. I need to write a book about it.
For 6 months, it became almost impossible for me to go out socially without meeting at least one woman who wanted to talk to me about her drug-taking career.
Okay?
Can you define
A drug-taking career. She said after 6 months, it was impossible for me to get out without meeting one woman that come to me and say, this Haitian is killing me, and I'm a junkie. And remember, beloved, that's when what those people were somewhat in their blessing. And then they were brutalizing our people, our women. They were destroying our men. Let's see, Nixon, I believe, usually I don't like to do this, but because Nixon, let's see, when did Nixon declare war on drugs? Well, this is when you need the AI or whatever, and then they don't tell you anything. When was it he declared this? Okay, was it June 1971? Nixon declares war on drugs, stating that drug abuse was public number one. Okay, Nixon declared war on our people in June 1971, and this was aired in August 1974. So roughly 3 years later, and then those women were seeing what the devastating effect the drugs were having into the white community, particularly the women. The men were doing drugs too. Okay, and then now, beloved, you look at those were mothers. Those were mothers back then, and they were addicts. You think they give birth to children, and those children are not addicts? So it's junkies giving birth to junkies. That's why the problem is really bad now in the midst of them. Okay, is that thing recording? Is it? All right, it's recording. Let's keep on moving. Okay.
kind of addict that you're talking about in the book?
Yes, and it's important to do so because I really believe that women take drugs for different reasons than men do, and that adults take them for different reasons than children, and that middle-class people take them for different reasons than disadvantaged or upper-class people.
Talking about black women, black men. See, she's talking about like there is a reason why the women are doing this, okay? And it's very different from those people, the riffraff group. Okay, listen how she referring to the other group.
Talk to me about her drug-taking career.
Can you define the kind of addict that you're talking about in the book?
Yes, and it's important to do so because I really believe that women take drugs for different reasons than men do, and that adults take them for different reasons than children, and that middle-class people take them for different reasons than disadvantaged or upper-class people. And what I wanted to talk about here was
disadvantage and lower class, okay? All right? That's a proper term. We were disadvantaged and we were the lower class. You guys were the middle class and there's the upper class. And now people are like, okay, well, there's only two classes, the elite and us. Suddenly we are bundled with all those people. Okay, well, yeah, well, all right, let's keep on going.
Specific incidents, and that's the middle class woman who is likely to be well educated, who at least went to college or had the opportunity to go to college, though she may have chose not to, who came from what we recognize as the distinctly advantaged sector of society.
Okay, literally a white woman. That's what she said. She said, well, the women that are doing this are not your typical walking down the street women. They are well educated, They went to college, or either they had the opportunity to go there, they just choose not to go there. And they are very wealthy, and they are in a good places. They're on our side. They are white women. Back then, again, when our women were watching this, they thought they are talking about them too. That's how they get our people. When they don't make specific claim, they just throw vague words, vague labels, and people quickly identify as this. Oh, well, I went to college. I had the opportunity to went to college. No, they are talking about white women here.
The two-parent household.
The two-parent household.
Professional father, or one at least minimally successful in business.
Okay, so they were rich people. Rich folks were doing this H back then.
And a mother that stayed at home and took care of the children.
So literally what she said here, this is your perfect housewife. This is your perfect family. She's not going to work. Again, this is what those women were doing. They were telling our women, you don't need a man. Go out there, get a job, work for yourselves, compete with the men, and then do like I do, get a house and stuff. And what they do themselves, they stay home, they take care of their children. They were doing a hell of a lot more drugs. And they have homes, they have husband, they got family that were successful. Their fathers were successful, their mothers were successful. So they don't need to go out there and get a job. They already inherited the wealth of the forefathers, the fathers, the grandparents, the homes and stuff. They have nothing to do and just stay home. And then they saw the struggling black woman and they told her, look, you need to go out there and show those men you are not a slave. Remember, men enslave us. Suddenly those people are just like our women. Go ahead, get a job. You don't need a man. You don't need family. You don't need anything. I don't need anything. Look at me. I got my own house. I got everything. I got my car. I'm a journalist. I'm this, I'm that. And our men believe it. They believe it and they jump into this thing. Never know that all those women, they had families, they have home, they had a husband, they had children. They had a hell of a lot of money. Above all, they were all strung out junkies, okay? And she just told you this here.
And I found that, as I think the book points out, that quite possibly proportionally and in absolute numbers, there are more habituated drug takers among middle-class women than in any other sector of society.
In any of other sectors in society. In 1974, this woman came in and tell you, there are more white women taking drugs than any other group. Men, women, black women, stumble, pumble, grumble, fumble together. These women just tell you straight up, in 1974, the problem was so bad. She said there's an absolute number. There's no doubt about it, that there is an insane and immense and massive number of white women, rich white women, well-off white women that were junkies. They were taking more drugs than anything. But why? One, well, they were in the blessing. Two, they were not the target. Three, they were women. Who would have thought innocent white women doing drugs? Who would have thought that? But that's exactly what was going on. All right, let's listen to her again. All right. There we go.
The professional father, or one at least minimally successful in business, and a mother that stayed at home and took care of the children. And I found that, as I think the book points out, that quite possibly proportionally and in absolute numbers, there are more habituated drug takers among middle-class women than in any other sector of society.
What kind of drugs are you talking about?
I'm talking about any mind-altering drug, be it legal or illegal.
What do you mean by legal drug?
By legal drug, I mean those that are commonly prescribed by a physician. Barbiturates, tranquilizers, and amphetamines.
Diet pills?
Diet pills, which are amphetamines. And I also include alcohol. I did not know when I began research for the book that I would include alcohol. But it quickly became obvious that drug-taking behavior is indistinguishable. I mean, once a person becomes habituated to drugs, it doesn't matter whether they're drinking alcohol, beer, or bourbon, or whether they're taking legal drugs or whether they're taking illegal drugs.
Now, let's define the word habituate. Define habituate. No, not obituaries. Define habituate. There we go. Habituate means to make someone or something used to something. For example, feeding moose habituates them to human.
Habituate.
Habituate, make or become accustomed or used to something. Accustom, make use, adapt, adjust, attune, acclimatize. Another word, junkie. Habituate, they become in habit. Okay, they were junkies. Alright, they were doing this because why? Again, they were junkies. Alright?
Heroin and cocaine. The effects are essentially the same.
Again, when they say, okay, what kind of drugs were those people were taking? You know, like people like, oh, okay, well, you know, it's like Tylenol, Advil PM. Those are drugs too. No. Ah, boy. Okay, let's let this go on.
Can you describe
Oops.
some of the effects of some of these drugs? Like, say, the hallucinogens first.
Well, I think you have to draw a distinction, and I do so in the book, between casual recreational drug use or drugs that are taken for a short-term problem in mood.
Mm-hmm.
You have to distinguish between that kind of drug taking and habitual drug taking, which is generally done on a daily basis, or which is something a woman turns to in any time of stress, be it for a period of 2 years or 20 years. I found that the effects of drugs, strangely enough, once you reach the habituated state, are all the same.
No matter what drug you're taking?
No, if in a certain limited way, you can postulate that amphetamines will produce an animated state, an increase in metabolism, more, quote, energy or feelings of goodwill, while the narcotics or the barbiturates will calm you down. But there's such thing as a paradoxical reaction in which an individual will take a drug that you expect to speed them up and it will in fact calm them down. But psychologically speaking, and that's what I think we have to talk about drugs. I don't think it does any good to talk about this, the specific pharmacology of drugs. I think we have to talk about the psychological states they induce. And I found that no matter what the drug was, whether it was alcohol or tranquilizers or marijuana or hallucinogens or heroin, if it was taken on a day-to-day basis, it was taken to deaden feeling. That unlike the casual use, which is to intensify feelings, it is without exception to deaden unpleasant feelings. And it produces a psychological state much like Novocaine. I mean, it really deadens your emotions so that in fact, while a drug-dependent person may feel better than they've ever felt in their life, what they're really feeling is the absence of negative feelings rather than the presence of positive ones.
What is coasting?
Coasting?
Yes.
Well, coasting is another term for nodding out, which is popular in the drug culture.
Okay, that's what coasting means, nodding out. Okay, those weren't your typical light drugs. Those were like heavy drugs those women were doing. Okay, they were coasting. All right. Do we have this word? What does the slang coasting means? No, well, they say costing, no, coasting. What does the slang word coasting? There we go. Ah, boy. Someone was not putting in enough effort to accomplish a goal. But anyway, so coasting back then mean nodding. Okay, those women, those folks, they were nodding, and they were very into drugs. They were very addicted to this thing. And no one didn't say anything. No one didn't raise any hell. Nixon declared drugs on all people, war on all people. Saying, well, the addiction is public number one. Is America enemy public number one? Let's see if we can get this, because people think we somewhat always, we somewhat always make that up. Okay, so Nixon declare war on drugs. There we go. Okay, they sure have this footage right there. Okay, that's an impeachment for Nixon, but there are so many stuff in there. Let's see this one. That's 1977. Let me see what they said here. It could be on YouTube.
And a continuing controversy that swirls around the DEA, considered an uncontrolled agency of fear by some, a vital army in the international war against drugs by others. Tonight, a look at that controversy, particularly as it relates to its activities abroad. Robert McNeil is on vacation, and Charlene Hunter-Gault is in New York. Charlene?
The Drug Enforcement Administration was created by the Nixon administration in 1973 as the major weapon in its war against narcotics. All drug enforcement efforts were consolidated in the new agency, which reported directly to the Nixon White House.
Here we go.
In his new book, Agency of Fear, Edward J. Epstein reports that the White House viewed the agency as a unique special police unit. It's a small agency, only a quarter the size of the FBI, and little is known about its operations, partly because of its reliance on undercover agents.
Okay, Agency of Fear. Let's see if we can get this book. Agency of Fear, the book. Is that what it is? Agency of Fear. Is that what that is? How much the book is? Let's go look at the images. Agency of Fear. I think that's better. Edward J. Agency of Fear. So what they said here, they said when Nixon formed the DEA, okay, their job was to report directly to the White House, not to the public. Okay, not to the public, not to the masses, directly to the White House. And this dude said the DEA is like a quarter of the FBI, but the stuff they were doing were very shady, and you could not even uncover what they were doing because they were so undercover, so to speak. But the stuff that they were doing, they were terrible things. All right, let's take another minute of this.
During its short history, the agency has been rife with internal dissension. One director was forced to resign amid charges from Congress and elsewhere of failure to root out substantial corruption and misconduct. This past year, there have been 2 separate congressional hearings. Parents and friends of Americans held in foreign jails on narcotics charges have testified about the abuses of foreign police. They included cattle prodding and water torture. Those who testified said the American agents stood idly by without a word of protest. Okay,
that's what those guys were doing. They were cattle prodding the people, waterboarding them, torture our people. That's what they were doing. Okay, confess. That was a mini inquisition. The DEA was a part of the mini inquisition that they were doing. All right.
Last year, the Justice Department issued the first guidelines governing the conduct of DEA agents abroad. They operate in 42 foreign countries. One group which has voiced concern about the DEA's activities abroad is the Committee for Public Justice, a New York-based civil liberties organization. The executive director of the Committee for Public Justice...
Oh, that 1970 fashion, you know, that's something else. That thing walked right out of the tri-light and then get in here. Like, yo, this is... Okay. All right. That's a woman fashion back then? Wow.
Is attorney Dorothy Samuels. Ms. Samuels, what is your problem with the Drug Enforcement Administration efforts?
Well, there are really 2 thrusts to the concern. that we feel about the activities of the Drug Enforcement Administration. The first thrust is in the area of human rights. As you said, the Drug Enforcement Administration has extensive activities abroad. These activities include training narcotics police, in some cases, say in Bolivia, assisting in the drafting of legislation.
Okay, so what those guys were doing, they were like training those police how to move the drugs. Okay, how to recognize the people that they don't want to get involved in there, and of course the people that they want to get involved. But anyway, so the point is, Nixon declared war on drug addiction, and you have mostly all the addicts are middle class white women, wealthy white women, well-off white women, and you did not see them being put in jail. Who they were putting in jail? Black men, black folk, black women, our people, the Israelites. That's what you guys did. That's what you people did. And you guys are wondering why the so-called the fentanyl or the xylazine trank zombie drug is so bad right now, because of those things. You ignore the people that was doing the true crime, because that's what it was, a crime. You define it like that as a crime, and then now this thing is happening.
It's when you've taken enough drug that you get a good feeling, and for the moment at least you don't need another drug.
What about strung out?
That again is a subculture term, and it means to be dependent on drugs. It means that if you find yourself without a drug, the drug of your choice, that you're going to feel very bad. And interestingly enough, however, I found that people generally had a drug they preferred, a drug that worked for them. That is, that it produced the feelings that they were seeking. But that if for any reason they could not obtain the drug of their choice, they would then switch to a different kind of drug. And it was at that point that middle-class women who had formerly held very strong notions of criminality, of the belief that illegal drugs were somehow wrong, but that alcohol or legal drugs were somehow right.
So it was at that moment those people like, that, I'm going to do drugs. I don't care what they told me about, like, yo, drugs are for these people over there and disadvantaged, the riffraff, and of course, remember, right after the civil rights, they don't refer to you as black anymore. They refer you as people of color, disadvantaged, label. They just put label on you. And those women were believed, they were raised to hold a strong belief against that. Anybody that they see that are people of color, so to speak, they are addicts, they are violent, they do drugs. All of them do drugs. That's something that's still prevalent today. Up until these women said, most of those white women, they had this belief, not anymore. They realized, wait a minute, those people don't do drugs at all. We do way more drugs than them. And a lot of people can tell you. 83 did more drugs than any other group. But then, of course, we are the face of this thing, which, of course, then in one place, which is good, make a lot of our people straighten up their act. I don't want to go out there and be an addict and stuff. I see what happened to these women and the others. I see all those stuff. But that's what she said right here.
It was at that time, if they could not obtain a legal drug, they could very quickly make the transition to illegal drugs. They did not set out to become criminals or to define themselves as criminals.
There you go. That's the separation right there. Those people are people with values. They're not just criminals, and then they're not going out there to do crime. Of course not, because they were wealthy. They had the money to get the drugs. What good would it be doing to me if I'm a wealthy person, a millionaire, I got plenty of money, and then I go ahead and rob a store to get money to go buy drugs? No. They have the money, so they're not going to go out there and commit a crime like that. Okay? Although taking drugs and buying drugs is a crime because you folks did this. All right?
But if they could not get the drug that they wanted,
they get another drug.
Yeah. Do you feel that drug dependency is indicative of mental illness?
Oh, boy.
No, in fact, I think that people who...
Listen to the answer she gave. She said, do you... Listen to this. This is professionally done, okay?
That drug dependency is indicative of mental illness?
Listen.
Define themselves as criminals. But if they could not get the drug that they wanted, then they would make that jump to the illegal drug world.
Do you feel that drug dependency is indicative of mental illness?
Do you think the people that are addicts or junkies, do you think they are doing this because of mental illness, or they try to cure their mental illness, or mental illness make them do this? Okay?
No, in fact, I think that people who take drugs have got to take the responsibility for their own actions. I think
she just tell you the answer straight up. She smiled because it's something that they always blame. Oh, well, she did this because of mental health. Oh, he went over there and wasted all those people with the bag of popcorn because of mental health. Oh, well, my son went to the school and then Jiffy popped the whole place because of mental health. You know, nobody want to take responsibility. She said, no, man, you got to take responsibility. Mental health didn't make you do none of those things. You did this on your own. You were conscious. You did this. And most people with mental health don't do hard drugs. They don't want to. They're already dealing with this mental health garbage they can get rid of. They don't do drugs. A lot of people do drugs. They blame it on mental health, especially those people. She told you, no, that's not what that is. All right. Okay, let's listen a little bit again.
Drug that they wanted, then they would make that jump to the illegal drug world.
Do you feel that drug dependency is indicative of mental illness?
No, in fact, I think that people who take drugs have got to take the responsibility for their own actions. I think to talk about insanity is quite often a cop-out, and it's a way we have of putting the responsibility in the other world, the netherworld of madness.
Yes. It's a cop-out. It's another way for us to put the blame on black people, the netherworld, the lower world. This woman just tell you straight up. Anytime they say mental illness, they're not talking about, oh, well, they're talking about black people fault. It's you Israelites' fault. You guys did this. Oh, he did this because of mental illness. Again, that's on where those people were in the blessing. Okay, this is pre-2019. Things were good. But when you look at this woman, when you listen to her, when you listen to the story, like, man, that wasn't good at all. I didn't want to be caught up in this, man. The thing is, like, those folks always make it seem that we are the only people that are suffering. We are the faces of all sufferers. We do the drugs, we do the crimes. We are the faces of the STDs, the AIDS, the syphilis, and everything. We are the most uneducated and all that, which is true. We give you credit for this. Okay, you guys put all of that. But when it comes to you, your women are the saint. They don't do anything. They are well-behaved, good Christian women and stuff like that. Now, because of the internet, because of the social media, so to speak, we can get those information and bring it out. This is 50 years ago. This woman was out there and saying that the reason people are always bringing the whole, well, mental health issue, it's a cop-out. It's a facade. It's a cover. It's something to say, to blame it on the others, on the nether realm, in the place like, oh, this is a riffraff neighborhood. Those riffraff do this because they're inferior human beings, all right?
When in fact, what small amount of testing has been done among the addicted population, the narcotic addict and the alcoholic, they find no higher an incidence of abnormal personality than they do in the normal population.
Okay, they just say those are normal people. They have nothing wrong with them. They don't have any mental health issue. They're just normal people that choose to do drugs because they love doing drugs. And they were running for certain things. You know, they love doing drugs and like, yo, man, hey, I know what my ancestors did, and I don't know how long this blessing gonna last. Well, it should last another 40, 47, 46 years. And after that, this thing degringolated back. This thing like split. This thing spurt. This thing splooge out. This brown stuff, yellowish liquid just busted out and hit the fan. Okay?
That is to say, they do not test out as overly schizophrenic or manic.
None of that.
Of our known categories of mental illness. That the addict and the alcoholic population
regular
are
people.
healthy.
Yeah, mentally healthy people, brethren. Okay, for instance, let's take a group of people working in New York. There we go. Ah, boy. There we go. Well, this is better. This is better. See, all those people walking down there, and well, see, there's a. Is that their car? What's going on here? Anyway, those are a group of people walking down the street and stuff, being normal people. I'm assuming, taking pictures. You got this normal group of people. They just look like normal folks. Nothing can indicate like those people have some kind of huge mental issue or mental health problem and things like that. They look normal. They look peaceful. They don't look threatened to me. But how many of them are on drugs? How many of them are addicts? How many of them are full-blown junkies? We don't know. How many of those people? You know, this is a typical, a correlation picture, classic, like a white man sitting here, some Hispanic-like women sitting there, a black dude in the midst, Asian there, and other white women, in which they already beat you, because they got two whites and two people that identify as whites. You're in the middle right here, you're done. But anyway, so they were saying like, okay, well, the people that do the drug, are they all crazy people and stuff like that? She said no, they were mentally healthy people. That's what that is. Okay, they are mentally healthy people.
I'm curious about one thing. I'm curious to know how the women you interviewed for the book fit the usual description we have of a drug-dependent person.
Well, they don't. They don't. Our literature is filled with drug takers who are either young, from the disadvantaged class, or male.
Okay, so let's listen to what she said here again. She said, since you're talking about the drugs and the normal people and stuff, what are the typical normal people you can say the moment you see that person, she's a drug taker, he's a drug taker, he's a junkie, he's an addict and stuff like that? Do they look a certain way? Do they look a certain stuff? All right, listen.
Fit the usual
categories of mental illness, that the addict and the alcoholic population are as mentally healthy as the normal population.
I'm curious about one thing. I'm curious to know how the women you interviewed for the book fit the usual description we have of a drug-dependent person.
Well, they don't. Did they fit the usual suspect? Because when they say a drug addict, they literally mean a black person. They literally mean a child of the light, Israelites. They literally mean one of our people. They say, okay, well, drug addiction. The moment you say drug addiction, they already know you're talking about black folk and black men precisely. And she said, no, they don't fit that. They don't fit your typical lower neighborhood, lower class dudes. They don't fit that.
They don't. They don't. Our literature is filled with drug takers who are either young, from the disadvantaged class, or male. There's been almost no research devoted to the female drug taker, the adult drug taker, and the middle class drug taker. Again,
she just put it nicely in saying, our literatures, our propaganda, our mainstream media is loaded of targeting the black community, targeting the children of the light, targeting us Israel, because of course, well, we were under the curse, and that was pre-2019. They are loaded with things like that. Keep telling you, those people are the drug takers, those are the junkies. Nobody pay attention to us, and there were no study that were done in the middle class that say women and white men, 83 group, whatever, that was doing the most of the drugs, and they were strung out too. None of that was saying. Nobody's saying anything of this. Nobody. They just focus on us. Classic. Just like right now. It's still the same thing. But now it is so bad that everybody know of the issue.
But that's what I was studying, and consequently, most of my findings run counter to the established literature. An example is the recovery rate of narcotics addiction, which is generally postulated at between 1 and 2%. That is, that of every 100 addicts, only 1 or 2 will ever, quote, get straight.
So she said all the stuff they were telling us in the mainstream media or in our literature, when I go out there, I do my own stuff. Remember, she was not an expert or anything. She was just asking information to see if there's any women dealing with the stuff that she was dealing with. And next thing you know, she become an expert. Next thing you know, she saw things that blow her mind. She like, whoa, that's a lot. And she discovered that there are so many people that were doing this thing, and then they were not being labeled, they were not being chased. And she realized another thing, that out of 100 people, 100 addicts, only one of them straighten out their lives. The 99 just go out there, keep doing this stuff, and then pass it on to their children passing and raising up and watch their mother, their father, or junkies and condition them. It's no different than the whole weed thing. They made our people adopted this culture of smoking weed is cool, smoking weed like it will relieve your stress. You got people smoking around their children, they smoke in the house. Well, I don't want my kids to smoke, but I'll smoke. They drink around their children, they drink in the house, and the kid, just you conditioning this kid to become just like you. And that's what happened. And that's what happened to those women. 99 out of the 100 went back and did the same thing.
Well, that may well be true for the disadvantaged class. It is not true for the middle class. I found numbers of women who had had heroin habits, heavy heroin habits, that for periods of 2, 3, 4 years, who left their drug taking behind in much the way that middle class women tend to leave things behind when they no longer work for them. So I found middle class women addicts are not at all like the stereotype of the addict that we've come to, the myth that we've come to believe in.
Do they have
okay, the myth. And of course they say, well, the middle class addict, you know, the white women, they are not like the typical myth that you're seeing in the radio, in the TV, listen to in the radio and all that. They are addicts. You see those women out there, they are drug diggers.
anything in common?
Well, there's a deprivation there, you know, it's just that the deprivation is more likely to have been emotional rather than social or economic. As I said, these women come from...
Okay, so she said, okay, well, what could possibly cause this? She said, well, it's not socio-economic. It's more for emotional things. You see, the disadvantaged community, of course, our people, they do this because of it's a socio-economic things, okay? They don't have the money. They are in a very bad social position, and this thing is being pushed and forced on them. And a lot of them do this. But white women, like I said before, they were raising a beautiful family, strong family, beautiful money, beautiful wealth. Everything is good, but they were emotionally suffering.
In the advantaged sector of society, and that's economically and socially.
Yes.
But there are very real questions about the emotional deprivation they all suffered as children.
Exactly. Another word, trauma. Beloved, you won't believe, you won't know what those are. We might come back to this. You won't believe. Well, there's a YouTube. I forgot the video. I forgot the name of the YouTube. My parents were junkies. Okay. There you go. No, not this one. There's let me see if they have the there's a oh, okay, well, it's not in there, but anyway, there is a channel that is run by a group of white women, and they are talking about how their parents were junkies, how their parents abused them, okay? It's because of the emotional abuse those people suffered. And they, as children, things were done to those people, man. Their parents do things unto them. And then when they grow up, they literally start drinking, smoking, using drugs.
You say in the book that there are two kinds of drug-dependent women. I'd like you to go into that a little bit. I found it really interesting.
Well, you can generalize to the extent of what I call the private drug taker and the public drug taker. The private drug taker is a housewife quite often, married, a mother quite often, who does not disaffect from the middle class, but who tries very hard to live out the myth of the middle class woman. She takes drugs, generally of the legal nature, either from her physician or from a number of physicians that she will have gathered together, or she drinks. Barbiturates and booze is probably the most popular combination among middle class women. And this woman doesn't talk about her drugs because she's ashamed of it, and she knows that she takes drugs because she's having a problem of some sort. Quite often it's that her life is not fulfilling, it is not happy the way the dream said it was going to be, you know, the myth of the middle class woman.
The myth of feminism. The myth of feminism. Okay, because that's what that's the thing that they were selling our women, and then the women jumped first into it, and that's what happened. You know, the myth of middle class women. No, the myth of feminism, that, you know, if you do this, you do that, and you got strict our women out of this. And again, what she said the private drug users are very often middle class, white women, wealthy, and they have children, mothers, they have husband working, and they are making a lot of money, and very often they are on drugs, either it's legal barbiturates and booze, drinking, and illegal hash and things like that. Okay, they were in it. Okay, they were in it, and they were all about it. And that's what she said. It now I come to realize that the whole thing was a myth, was a cop out. That was in 1974 when they realized this. Okay, did they stop it? Did well, they of course somewhat silenced this woman up until now. Many people didn't even know who she was. Up until now, people just know that this thing was already a problem in the 70s, 1974, even in the 60s, okay?
But the woman that I write about is a public drug taker. She's a woman who comes from the middle class. Her origins are decidedly middle class. After she stops taking drugs, she will revert very much to the middle class. But during the period of her drug taking, she disaffects almost entirely from the middle class and displays a great deal of hostility toward the straight world. It can be a deviant subculture of alcohol, where she joins the bar society, or it can be one of drugs, where she moved to Los Angeles or Chicago or New York, or one of the centers where we have a lot of primarily youthful drug taking.
Okay, so that she put it very well. The bar scene, you know. Let me see. I don't want to. Please don't show me anything that could get us in trouble. What is this thing? The bar scene. There you go. No, not the bar scene. The bar scene.
Listings for the bar scene around Aventura.
Scene.
Here they are.
There we go. That's better. Going to the bar, you know. Drinking, do drugs, more drinking, you know, more alcoholism. I should have said people at the bar. There we go. That's better. Okay, this life, drinking, and that's why people always pressure other people when they go out to drink. Not me, man. You ain't gonna pressure me to drink. Or, well, you need to be cool, Big Levi, and drink with us. No. Take drugs with us. No, I don't live this life stuff. No. If I'm in there, it's two things. Either I'm in there on business, or I'm in there for something personal. I'm not in there to do drugs and socialize with people. There are plenty. I'm socializing with people now. And that's what that is, man. Those women do a lot of drugs. They drink a hell of a lot. Okay. All right. I can't drink. I can't stand alcohol, man. That thing burn my mouth, burn my throat, burn my belly. I don't know how people drink, unless if it's medicine. But besides that, I can't drink. You know. So yeah, that's what they were. That's what they were doing.
Can you describe the adolescence of these women, the sort of middle-class upbringing that they've had? I found that very startling.
Well, they're the kind of women that you would expect good things to happen to. They're not the sort of women that you would think would be driven to drug addiction or alcoholism. Of the 6 women that I talked to, 5 were Girl Scouts. They all did very well in school. They were
A traits.
They were attractive women. Their
Beautiful.
health was good. They were popular within the framework of having a lot of friends and being invited out to places. However, I found that the commonality they shared began perhaps in the home and began in a feeling of uniqueness that they all had about themselves. The belief from a very early age that there was something wrong with them, that they were cut off from a female experience that other women shared, but there was something distinctly unique about them. And it was, I mean, these feelings of weirdness, of strangeness, were pretty much under control until the time came when they were expected to make the transition
into
from
womanhood,
middle-class children to middle-class women. And it was at the time when they should have been expected to marry and to begin families.
And then they start doing
broke
drugs.
And ran, disconnected entirely from the middle class.
Okay, so they broke and ran. So she said, well, those are, describe those women and stuff like that. She said, well, they were beautiful women, popular women, wealthy women. They were doing, everything was doing right to them up until they reach an age, they realize everything that they were doing was handed unto them. They did not earn it. They did not share what other women shared. See, it's pretty much the same thing with white men. When they are growing up, everything is handed unto them. The wealth and stuff. Up until they meet real men out there. Real men that work for what they have. Real men that put on the actual work, that build things with their hand, that do actual work, that earn their keep, so to speak. And they feel shame. They felt empty. They felt like, yo, I've done none of those things. This guy, he come from a tough neighborhood. He worked his way out. Now he own a house. He got a wife and kid. And because he worked for it. I didn't work for none of those things. It was handed down to me. And they feel shame. Same thing goes for those women. They were popular in high school because the society, their society set up those things. And they were it's built like this. Okay, that's what that is. When they realize all the stuff and they realize the shame, they realize the true nature of their society is swaggerjacking, stealing, and blaming on other people, they felt the real shame. That's why a lot of them, okay, a lot of them, they literally like, yo, you know what? I can't move to this whatever that my parents or my forefathers wanted me to do. I'm out. Okay? It's pretty much the same. The shame. They realize something is missing. And what is missing? The womanhood. The right to passage. If you are a man, that's why a lot of men stuck being boys. They are in the 40s, 50s, 30s. They stuck being boys because they didn't go to the rite of passage. They didn't go to a place. That's why a lot of men, grown men in the 83 community, they still living with their mother's basement. They don't want to get a job. They are afraid of everything. They went under the cover of introvert. Oh, I'm an introvert. Well, an introvert is somebody that don't like to hang out with a bunch of people, but they got out, they got job, They got friends. An introvert is not a shut in, somebody that stay inside and afraid of the world because they are afraid how people are going to judge them, how people are going to talk about them, their physiology, their physical architecture, like how they look, how they dress, how they talk, how much money they have, what they drive, can they drive, are they married, are they successful. Those people, they look at this because they didn't go to the righteous passage, they didn't go to the pain. And then they grow up in a painless and a sheltered society, family, and then they grow up to be cowards. They don't want to take responsibility for anything. They dislike accountability. Okay?
And I think in large part this has to do with the sort of families they came from. In particular, the kind of mothers they had.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how do they feel about their mothers? I'm confused about that.
Okay, because it is always, when it comes to things like that, it is always the mothers and 83 society that did this to the children, because they are the one that spent the most time with them because they were stay-at-home wives, and bereft the daughters, bereft the son, because that's what the whole feminist movement was about. Okay, destroy the children, destroy the seed. It's a very delusional movement that destroy their society. We're still there. Well, they made this thing like to destroy us, but ultimately it destroyed them. Those people, they have no legs to stand on. They have nothing they can actually say. Everything is just backward. Why? You said? Well, because they are now out of their blessing. The curse is cleaving unto them. And the women say, I was going to ask you, what was the relationship with the mothers? Okay? And all that time, our people think like those folks have it so nice. They were so good that children were always right, because that's what they show in the TVs and movies and TV shows and music videos and all this stuff. All the media, they show that they are perfect. Okay? They are perfect and we are imperfect. We sleep around. And the most undesirable men, the weakest, unproductive men, he is the father of that child. He is the father of this. He got like 16 kids running out there and people cheering him up. Oh, he's a player. But when a productive man, when a man, one of our millionaires, one of the men that look like us, for instance, I know there's a lot of hate from the brother, but anyway, Tiger Woods. There you go. Okay, a guy like Tiger Woods, productive man, millionaire, and he got down with one more women, they destroy the dude. You will have people, our own people say, oh man, he's immoral. He's sleeping around with a bunch of women. He's a freaking king. He can sleep around with as much women as he can because he got the money, he got the mean, he can take care of them. Mind your own goddamn business. See, any man like this that do anything like that, society will run after him. Like, yo, you're supposed to stay with one woman and then we are in your life. Don't go out there and do this thing. And you are immoral. You're going to go to hell and stuff like that. Do you know what Tiger Woods did, brethren? Golf was the only thing that 83 white men was hold on to. And this guy came in and boxed them out of there. Okay, but when you got like typical Jerry, you are the father. Maury, all right. Maury, you are the father. There you go. Okay, so there you go. Okay, you got the unproductive, and then you got, this is the behavior that they portrayed. Okay, this is the behavior that they portrayed, okay? You are the father, this dude, he's the father of this child all over, and then people are happy he's the father, he got 6 baby mamas, you know, and then, you know, all those things, people acting out, being, you know, clowning and gesturing and things like that, okay? Black folk is the one that made these shows, the Maury show. They went in there and do the best performance, okay? All right, you are not the father, you are the father, okay? That's what our people do and going around, and people love this, they laugh. But when a guy like Tiger Woods, okay, there we go, right here, there you go. When he sleep with one and more women, people like, oh, well, you shouldn't do this because you got so much money, married your money, leave it. Look at the dude face, man. That Tiger Woods is destroyed, man. The dude is destroyed, man. Because of people made him feel guilty because he had multiple wives. You are looking at a Solomonic-like men. Millionaire, billionaire, have all the money, can do whatever the hell he wants. And those guys, they let people, well, of course, he was contracted under Nike to be a decent person because white society dictate. They don't want a man like that to spread his wealth. Okay? Let me see, how many children does Tiger Woods have? How many kids Tiger Woods has?
According to Wikipedia, Eldridge Taunt Woods is an American professional golfer.
He got one child. That one child, you can spread the wealth onto him. You can pass on the wealth onto him. Boom! They get rid of him, and then the government come, or the dominant white society come, they took the wealth. But if he put a zero behind his, had 10 kids, he have an army with him. That's what they do. They make our most productive men, okay? They come up, they destroy those men. They make them fear of children and have them have 1 or 0. So when they are no more, he's 47. He look like he's in his 60s, man. The way that the dude look, man. And then by the time they pass the wealth to that one child, which is already brainwashed, and this child could die or anything could happen to him or her, and they took the wealth. But they got the horrible, terrible, bad gene dudes in the midst, spreading their seed around, and they have our people glorify that. Terrible.
Well, they all cared very much for their mothers. I think that the love of their mothers, the respect or the approval was very important to them. But at the same time, they wanted more than anything not to grow up to be like their mothers.
Exactly.
Because they saw from an early age that their mothers were not happy women. And you know, as a child, you look at your role model, and it's generally your mother.
Your mother, yes.
And you see that she's unhappy, frustrated, disappointed, and the natural connection to make is that I don't want to grow up to
be like my mother. Yeah.
I don't want to be a wife and a mother. Because this has clearly been so unrewarding, and it has caused pain to a woman that I love, to my mother. And I think it's borne out by the fact that during the years of their drug dependency, and some of them were stood out for 20 years,
oof,
they paraded their drug taking in front of everyone except their mothers. And to their mothers, they maintained elaborate facades of happiness, a pretense that their lives were going much better than they really
than when they really were. That's something 83 do all the time, pretending. We know things are not good at all, but they just pretending everything is fine. You know what? Everything is doing so much better. Everything is doing so beautiful. Everything is doing so good. We're doing better. We're doing so much better that we're doing much more better when we were doing better in 2019. Oh, we are at our best now. That's the fakery. But when you go under the surface, when you go deep, you'll find out it's the quiet opposite. Okay?
How do you account for this feeling of their feeling of being different?
I think, in a sense, they are different. That is to say, they are forceful women, aggressive, competitive, unfocused, unfortunately, and with nothing to do with the forcefulness or the aggression, except sort of turn it on themselves and turn it against people around them. But it was reinforced by the problems with their mothers, and by the fact that none of them received any encouragement to grow up to assume an identity as anything except just a woman. I think one of the most interesting questions I asked was, what do you want to be? What did you want to be when you grew up? And all of the women would look at me very negatively, and they'd say, well, I just wanted to be a woman. You know, whatever that might be, just a woman.
They can't.
And so then I would follow, and I'd say, well, did you want to be like your mother? And that's when they would get very vehement. And they would say, no, my mother was weak, my mother was pushy, my mother was unhappy, a variety of negative terms, which didn't conceal the real love that they had for their mothers. It just simply characterized the strong despair they had at their mother's lives.
How do you feel they coped with their uniqueness? I mean, in a sense, they went from, you know, one culture to a subculture, and, you know, in that subculture sought the approval of their peers also. I mean,
at that time, I mean, people who take drugs tend to think that it's a very unique lifestyle, but it's not. And they did exactly what you've said they did. They sought out like-minded people. I mean, they disaffected from a middle class that had failed them. They rejected the roles that they believed they could not live up to. But because, you know, women need support, people need support, and you look for like-minded people. And where they found the most acceptance was in the deviant subcultures of
well, how did they break the cycle?
Well, they don't.
How did they recover?
Yeah.
They don't. They can't.
But to answer that, I
They
talk
can't.
a little bit about the nature of the process of drug dependence.
You can't. Let me just cut right through here. You can't. The moment the curse is upon you, you just gonna have to stay there until it passes.
People take drugs because they work. The tragedy of drugs is probably that they work so very well for a short term. No matter what's your psychological problem, you can find a drug, if you experiment enough, that will make you feel better. That is why it's impossible to make a rational argument against drug taking to a person who is possibly feeling good for the first time in her life.
Yes, you can't. Again, beloved, now that we know this isn't about drugs at all, this is about the plague. The moment this thing latch onto you, there's nothing you can do. I don't know, I may be alone in this, but do you think the moment the Most High God Almighty put the curses upon 83, they'll be able to get out of it if, I don't know, they strengthen their life, or if they give our brethren reparation, or if they said, you know what, I'm sorry, I know what I did was wrong, but I'm sorry and stuff like that. Do you think things like that will somehow or somewhat work? You think they can get rid of the plague by simply not doing drugs? By simply saying they are sorry, or even treat us better? I personally believe that the moment this thing got onto you, that's set for you. That's set for you. You're gonna have to wait until it passes. And you can be no mourning, and then when you come back, it's gonna still be on you until the generation that this thing's supposed to be cut off will cut off. Let's see how long we are into this thing. All right, okay, boy, let me see. All right, okay, we'll stop here for part 1, and then we will go for part 2 in the next video. Well, it's probably gonna be another week from now. We'll have part 2 of this, or probably another day for now. It depends, because this is going to be posted on my other channel, okay? We will go for part 2, all right, beloved? You can wait for it. It's not something that's going to be today, but it's going to take some time for it to get there, okay? Shalom.